when they start looking at or start exploring the issues of Muslims and the Islamic fundamentalists and start portraying them as terrorists, that does add to a certain resentment towards these communities, which lead to hate crimes towards them as well. And when hate crimes are being committed, people of similar physical traits and from a certain geographical location kind of get clumped together.
8:45 a.m.
People coming down. We felt a little shake. Everybody fell to one side. We had no knowledge that
Steel core weakened by the plane's impact and the searing fire.
Tragic hour in America's history.
Unfortunately, hate crimes against South Asians is not a new phenomenon. For the last few years, South Asians have had the highest reported incidence of hate crimes in this Asian American community.
It's meant to terrorize everyone who's from that community. It's not just an act against the individual, it's an act against the whole community.
You can't be silent. You need to oppose it.
It was 11th September, Tuesday. My family went to Gurdwara for pray to God for the victims. And when I was coming back to my home, on the crossing of 118 95th Avenue, two guys came out from the car. तो वो वहाँ से दोनों भागे और भाग के उन्होंने मुझे ये कार के पास ही एकदम धक्का दिया और they pushed me from my back and I fell down. My turban fell down, my specs fell down, and other guy from the second car came and they beat me with the baseball bat which has nail on the baseball bat. When they were beating me, they were saying, "Go back to your country, go back to your country."
Satnam Vaheguru, Satnam Vaheguru.
We don't share the same ethnic or religious affiliation to the people, at least, who they think that they're targeting. That's not to say, and it's important to say, that any group should be targeted.
Bias incidents happen when people feel threatened or fearful, and that's what happened with the September 11th attack.
I hope every Arabic-born son of a dies, slimy piece of race.
This business gutted by fire. 6 bullets fired at this Texas mosque.
The murder of a Pakistani Muslim in Dallas. Ethnic profiling on a massive scale.
This is not a new phenomenon. Certainly, there were bias crimes well before this event happened. We know for a fact, for example, that South Asians had the highest a number of reports of bias incidents happen in the Asian American community for 2 years running now.
My two cousins and I left my aunt's house. There was a plane that was flying overhead, and because it's right near the landing strip, it's very loud. So I remember making a comment about, how I couldn't believe that they lived on this block, or how they, could tolerate the loud noise. And from a few houses away, someone told me in not exactly a nice way to shut up. And I was taken aback. I was a bit startled. I just basically said, "I'm sorry." And I thought that was pretty much it. My cousins and I then started walking up the block on the way to the restaurant. And about a minute later, I heard the sound of people. I heard the sound of someone or something running up behind me. So I turned around, and the last thing I remember is my hands were up in the air and someone was lunging at me with their fists.
Among the things that his attackers yelled at him while they were beating him is,
"You people deserve to get the hell out of my neighborhood."
3 white men struck him with baseball bats, leaving him severely injured.
I was treated for 2 fractures in my jaw, a laceration in my head, and nerve damage to my leg.
Here was this case which affected an Indo-Caribbean U.S. citizen who is being identified as someone from India. This was clearly an example where people outside of our communities didn't differentiate between whether you were from India or Pakistan or from Guyana or Trinidad. You look the same to them, and those who want to hurt you or discriminate against you, will not differentiate where you're from exactly.
The day is Friday, April 28, 2000. I cannot forget that day ever in my life.
More charges are expected to be filed next week against the man accused in Friday's deadly shooting rampage outside of Pittsburgh.
My brother-in-law called me and says, somebody shoot Sandeep.
34-year-old Richard Baumhammers is in custody, accused of killing 5 people and wounding a 6th at several locations around suburban Pittsburgh yesterday afternoon. He allegedly shot a Jewish woman, 2 Indian men, a Chinese man, a Vietnamese man, and an African-American man.
Sandeep was helping my sister in a grocery store, and that guy just came in and started shooting him.
मैं स्टोर में अकेला था, उसने मुझ पर गोली चला दी और सीधे मैं ज़मीन पर गिर गया। उसके बाद मुझे कुछ नहीं पता।
Neck down, his body is completely disabled. He cannot move his arms or legs or nothing. For food and for every little thing, he has to be dependent on somebody else.
I cannot work now. I wanted to help, support my parents. Now I cannot do that. I had so many other dreams in my life, and now I cannot do them.
In 1987, the Jersey Journal, a local New Jersey newspaper, got a letter from a group calling themselves the Dot Busters, and the letter promised to inflict violence upon Indians in the Jersey City area until they left. So it was essentially a manifesto, a call to war against all of the Indians living in that area. These crimes had been occurring prior to the letter, and people knew that there was growing animus against the South Asian community in Jersey City. Navroz Modi had just moved to Jersey City with his parents, and he had gone to a restaurant with a work colleague. And as they were leaving, a group of about 10 or 11 kids were hanging around outside the restaurant and started taunting him. They started calling him names. He was bald, so they were calling him Kojak and Baldy. They called him Hindu. And a fight ensued. And in that fight, they killed him. They took a brick and smashed his head into the ground. And every time he got up, they would just hit him again and prop him up and hit him again, until finally he hit the back of his head and didn't get up again. He was then in a coma for a couple of days and then died in the hospital.
It was August 98. The time was about 9:30 in the evening. I still remember one car pulled in the parking spot.
They pulled their car from here.
They sprayed some kind of chemicals.
And they sprayed from here, right here.
I was holding 4 cups of tea in my hand, so everything got on my palm. I got burn on my palm. So I was a little upset, but you know, the boys, they started yelling and screaming and showing fingers and speaking bad words, and they said, "You Indians, go back to your country."
They did commit a crime. They committed battery and assault, and what made it a hate crime was the fact that they said, "You Indians, go back to your country." That was just an additional element to what already was a crime.
South Asian Network people, they approached us about the incidents, and actually speaking, I was not ready to talk about this. But when I figured it out that these people, they are helping me and they are on my side, then I started talking about what happened.
What we found out was that initially the law enforcement agencies were treating it as a minor misdemeanor. But in actuality, you know, this should have been treated as a hate crime. So due to SAN's timely intervention and working with these mainstream organizations and law enforcement, we were able to prosecute these perpetrators under the hate crime statutes.
If someone were to beat you up, if they do it because of your race or because of your religion or some other kind of feature like that, it is not just a crime, but it's motivated by hate and becomes a hate crime. We have found over the last 2 reports of our anti-Asian violence report that the crimes against South Asians have been dramatically on the rise.
Many times I've heard people say, you know, we pay our taxes, we don't go to bars, we don't drink, we're not a burden on society.
I don't have any enemies, I don't have any connection with any crime, I don't have any kind of bad influence.
Why do we deserve to be the targets of racial violence?
I am an Indian, I am a South Asian, I am a Pakistani, I'm a Bangladeshi, but there's never I'm a Bangladeshi American. So we've always sort of made ourselves into others, and also from society also views us as others.
There's a perception that South Asians just don't belong in the neighborhoods in which they live.
Hate crimes are about difference, and hate crimes are about otherness. If you look at just the racial insults, the content and the substance of them, if you can call them that, they weren't about, hey, darky, which I've also heard, but they weren't about that. They were about religion.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم
They're about what people were wearing. They're about bindis. They were about saris. They were about the way that we appear in cultural ways or in other external ways, not just the color of our skin. It creates a bigger target to hit.
And go to junior high school where there's no one basic around. When you're the only one person, you're like the one minority, and they're obviously going to pick on you, saying names like Hindu when they don't even know who you are.
I would tell the deans and stuff like that, but they can't really do anything about it. Like they would, they'll tell them not to say it again. That doesn't really do anything about it.
I wear a scarf to school, right? And like these people, they pull it off, and I told my parents.
South Asian families really don't know how to deal with it when it happens, because it really takes them off guard and they're not sure how to handle the situation or that they have rights.
Most South Asians, immigrants, and refugee communities have the lowest number of reporting of hate crimes. The reason that those communities underreport hate crimes is a basic fear. This fear has many faces to it. Some of it is based on what their experience has been with law enforcement in their own countries. They don't trust the law enforcement in their own country, and they now come to this country and see that law enforcement doesn't even look like them.
The biggest drawback which I was having and still I have got is the translation of the language from my language to English. The terminology of the laws, it was hard for me, and because of that, even I needed help.
People would be experiencing these terrible acts of violence against them, and they would go to the police, and the police wouldn't take their report. Or they would go to the police would take their report, but they wouldn't include the racial component in the report.
I immediately called 911, and the operator, he asked me what happened. I described every single thing what happened, and the operator says, anybody died? And I said no. So they said, like we have got more emergency to take care.
You should pick up the phone and call 911. The first response is to call the police. A report must be made.
We believe that if we can go out and show the communities that we have trained their law enforcement, and their law enforcement is receptive to prosecuting these hate crimes, and that a report will be taken and that this case will be given serious attention, then communities will come forward and let us know when there is a hate crime that is committed. Because we can charge all we want in a hate crime, but we need to have the community's involvement to be able to prosecute that case. We need victims to come forward. We need witnesses to come forward.